Welcome to the Danny Miner podcast. We got episode 29. What's going on, Pete?
Hey, we're back once again. This is an exciting episode, Danny. I've actually been staying up late waiting for this one, so I'm excited to be here, man.
And I just wanted to tell you, I'm looking at us on Instagram. It looks fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So everything looks good, man. Pete, this thing has been going on for 2 years, the Idaho case. So we're looking at 2 years of this. And you're not going to believe this, Pete, man. This thing actually happened on my birthday.
Really?
Yes, on my birthday.
Oh, man. What a present to you.
I know.
Wow. We've got Debbie in here already. I see Debbie. Good evening, Debbie.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We appreciate it.
Angela's here.
Hey, Angela, what's up? Welcome back. Thank you, everyone.
Yep, we got them all in here. Yep. We're loading up. So, Pete, listen, the thing Debbie said, I'm here. We see you, Debbie. Debbie's here. Angela's here. The whole crew's there. Pete, listen, everybody wanted me to do this podcast because there's so many questions about this case. And I'm going to be honest with you, Pete. This case has bothered me since the beginning, honestly. And what bothers me is how many people think this man's not guilty. Pete, have you read? I know you read up on this case. I have 100 videos on TikTok about this case. I know you watched all of them. What do you think? Well, I really want your opinion.
Well, I'll be honest, Danny. Since I planned on doing this show, I've been actually talking to random people about the case and just getting other people's perspectives because, like you, I want to know why people think what they do. I think that so far what we have is we have DNA evidence. We have source DNA that was found inside the house. We have cell phone towers pinging his cell phone near the location. We have the sighting of the car, the Hyundai Elantra, the white Hyundai Elantra. So those pieces of evidence alone, Danny, are all very convincing to me. I will say that so far.
Right. And to the people out there, I just want to give you the rundown before we take this case step by step. I want to give you the rundown about the evidence against him.
Yeah.
The evidence against him as a detective of 14 years, a law enforcement officer of 27. The evidence is overwhelming, guys. Overwhelming. You have DNA on the knife case that was left at the scene, and the knife case was under one of the victims. So how do you explain your DNA being on a knife case that murdered all these people? How do you explain that? And it was underneath one of the victims. And not only that, Pete, they pinged his phone that night, and they pinged his phone to being at the murder scene. Then they pinged his phone all the way home to his house in Washington. Then they pinged his phone the next day. He came back at 9 o'clock to make sure to see if the police were there, to see what happened. He actually came back to the scene like an arsonist would, okay? Arsonists do that. The evidence is so overwhelming, Pete. They got him purchasing a weapon. They got him purchasing overhauls. But yet there's fucking people, Pete, and excuse my language, that think this man is not guilty. It's crazy to me. Totally crazy to me.
You know, I hope a lot of these people will tune in today, Danny. And I see Angela says, let's not forget about her birthday. So happy birthday, Angela. We will not forget about you. And Angela also says DNA does not lie. Absolutely. So I guess that's one of my biggest questions, Danny, that I would ask to all the people who are either in doubt or someone earlier told me that they thought Brian was being framed. So my question is, what evidence is there to indicate that he's being framed? What evidence is there to indicate that he is not guilty? I'd like to know that. I'd like to, as a prospective jury member, what are they going to present? You know, what's the attorney going to say in this case? So where is that evidence showing that he's not guilty?
Listen, this is the thing, Pete. The thing is, there is no evidence to show that he's not guilty. But people online are conspiracists. Like that, all I think is, it's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy. They set him up. And the biggest line I get, Pete, and this is something we should discuss.
Yeah.
They're saying that there's no way he could have killed all these people alone. Okay? Because I think, I forget the exact time. Was it 10 minutes it took them? They're figuring the timeline was about 10 minutes. But Pete, think about how long 10 minutes is. People don't realize how long 10 minutes is. This is how I explain it. Think of a TV show that you love. One of your little half-hour TV shows.
Right.
It takes about 10 minutes to have a commercial.
Yeah.
So think about how long you were watching that show till it goes to commercial. So 100%, he could have killed 4 people in them 10 minutes. Like,
Absolutely.
people just don't get how long 10 minutes is.
Yeah, absolutely. In the matter of life and death, 10 minutes could be everything. So, yes, I understand there are questions. And as I've been reviewing the case, I started coming up with some of my own. A lot of these questions have already been posed by many other parties in your comments, Danny. So I see that a lot of people have the same type of questions. Yes, there is a concerning fact. 10 minutes is a long time. Exactly. It was just verified by Love My Animals up here in the comments. Exactly.
Right.
So, of course, there are the questions of the roommates. That's something else we'll discuss at some point today. There are the questions of why was the 911 call not made until so many hours after the unaliving took place? That's another big question, right?
Big one.
I don't have answers to these, but I hope that as we do have more and more commenters today, I hope some people at least have ideas and perspectives, because I like to hear perspectives out so I can sift through them and see if there's any truth.
Right. And listen, I just want to announce before we continue with this, we're
Yeah,
going to give out the 3 best questions of the day. We're going to give out hats, mugs, and shirts still.
that's right.
Your choice. So you're going to have a hat, a mug, or shirt to the top 3. You guys pick whatever you just want from the Minor Details podcast. So
Great.
listen, the one thing, let's get right into that.
Yeah,
Pete, it is weird. Even though I think Koberger's guilty, to me, it's very strange that it took the roommates to like noon to
yeah.
call the police. And Pete, that to me, I don't understand this one bit. I still don't think these roommates were involved at all. But to me, it's strange as fuck. And I'm sure you think the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. That was one of the first things that just stopped me when I read the facts. I said, "Huh." I said, "Was there not a report of one of the roommates even seeing a person in a mask in the house?" And yet they didn't call the police. That to me is just, I can understand, like, college. What does college come with? Partying. What does partying come with? Drinking. I don't know what exactly was happening in that 24-hour period of time surrounding the before and after the before events, the leading up to this. So I don't know who was partying, who was up late, who was up on a 3-day bender trying to study or cram or whatever. So with that being said, still, you would think that any person in any situation would immediately say, wow, something's not right here. So it's very weird and it's very suspicious. I think that's why some of these people are making the accusation that no, they think he's innocent because of this weirdness. So I think there's a weirdness that exists in the roommate situation, but I think that might be separate from Brian's innocence or guilt.
Exactly. And that's how I feel too, Pete. And here's the problem, Pete. These poor roommates that survived this incident, I hate to say this, because of this weirdness, Pete, they are going to be ripped to the coals by the defense attorney when they're on the stand.
Oh, yeah.
There, could you imagine the defense attorney saying to them, so wait a second, you saw somebody in your house
Yeah.
and all you did was close the door and then call the police 10 fucking hours later. Could you imagine telling the jury that? Like, these poor girls and guys, I have went to trial. I've been through many trials. I've been grilled by defense attorneys. I promise you, these girls are going to be on the stand for days.
Yeah.
Days. These defense attorneys are going to grill them for days because they want to establish reasonable doubt. Not that he's not guilty, because they don't have to establish he's not guilty.
No.
They only have to establish reasonable doubt. And they're
Yeah.
going to go after these girls like nothing I ever seen. I feel bad for these girls, but they better get prepared because they're coming after them.
Absolutely. I think that in this situation, it's one of those unfortunate things that, yes, if you're in that place at that time, you now are accountable. You now are responsible as being a witness. Some people, of course, it's uncomfortable. Of course, it's going to be not only tedious, but you're right. They're going to be ripped apart. They're going to be thrown out to the wolves, to the jackals, essentially. So I get it. No one wanted that, but at the same time, now that this has transpired, it has to be dealt with. The roommates are going to have to do something. They're going to have to speak up, and they're going to have to answer that. I hope we find out some answers in court. And I see Angela says, off topic, we look fire. Thank you, Angela. You do too. So much love. We couldn't do it without you all. And I really want to know, I feel like the majority of people out here, Danny, do lean towards the side of what you just said, that Brian is guilty. The evidence is stacked up to him. But I do think that there is still a good amount of questions, and there's a good amount of people who are just, like you said, conspiracy theorists or whatever. They just don't know, or they're throwing out, well, there's too much weirdness in the case. Now, one of the most recent ones I heard was he was framed. He's being framed, and it had something to do with the roommates framing him. So what case, what correlation, Danny, did Brian have to the victims? What connection do we know of that exists between Brian and the victims?
Well, see, that's the thing, Pete. People want to know, and I think they got to try to establish that. But Pete, one thing probably you don't know because you just started covering the case is that the judge put a gag order on it. So the prosecution's not really allowed to tell what they have, other than we knew before the gag order that they had the DNA.
Right.
Okay, so there could be more evidence that we don't even know about, right? But I'm going to guess, Pete, because we really don't know why he killed these kids. We have no clue. Was he a serial killer? Was he stalking them? But that's what I think. I think he was stalking one of the girls or both of them. Okay? I think he was stalking them. There is rumors that he was following them on Instagram. Okay, that they're following both of the girls on Instagram. The one girl was a waitress. He used to go there and eat. Right. So I don't know if the girls knew him, but he knew them, is what I'm saying. And he stalked them, and that's what I believe. I believe there's going to be an infatuation with one of these girls. I truly believe that.
Wow. That does make sense, and that definitely is in line with the research I did, saying that he followed all three of the female victims on Instagram. I don't believe he followed the male victim, Ethan, but yes, he was following the other three. And I see that Debbie says Debbie has seen his chat on Instagram with one of the girls. Okay, so see that's a little bit news to me because, as you mentioned, Danny, I'm just now getting more in depth with covering the case and learning about it. So I did not know he was actually engaging with chat with them. So he actually was in their DMs apparently. So that to me gives an extra layer of suspiciousness. Okay, and Jacqueline is commenting in 2 worked in the restaurant. So I guess maybe he was around 2 of them, those 2 at the same time. So one or the 2 in the subject of his infatuation, right? Is that what we're thinking?
That's what, as a detective, as a detective for 14 years, my personal guess would be that. And that's, if I was one of the detectives, I'd be looking into that. Pete, I'm telling you, I would guarantee they have some kind of evidence of that. I will be shocked if they don't. I believe they probably have that. Don't forget, like I said, guys, there's a gag order. So they're not allowed to tell us any more about this. But I can tell you this, Pete, just really quick, I want to mention this. A lot of people question the DNA on the knife sheath, right? On the case. Absolutely. What they're saying is because they got the DNA from his parents' garbage. So they used his dad's DNA to match the DNA on the knife case. Okay?
Okay.
But now they actually took swabs of his cheek when he was arrested, and now they matched the cheek swabs also to that DNA. So it's a 100%. Nothing's ever a 100% match, but it's probably 99.9999% sure that it's Brian Koberger. Yep. So I mean, the evidence to me, how does Ann Taylor, the defense attorney, get over that hump? I don't think she can. I honestly, God, don't think she can, Pete.
That's a great point. And Danny, you'll probably can explain this a little better than me. My knowledge of DNA is probably to the extent of shows like Criminal Minds or Dexter or different TV shows I've watched where there's always reality tinged with fiction. So from what I understand, DNA comparison is done through different markers in the genetic code, right? Like you have a certain markers in the DNA and it's matched up. So there's so many different components that make up a strand of DNA, right?
Yes. So look, Pete, it is way easier to get DNA at a crime scene than a fingerprint. Way easier.
Okay, interesting. So the DNA that they found here was found on the sheath of the weapon, correct?
Correct. And it's a touch DNA, meaning he touched it. So he touched, he had his hands on the case. Now, Pete, here's the thing about DNA a lot of people don't realize. Like me just walking into this podcast room today, I'm leaving DNA in this room. Skin's falling off me, right? Hair's falling off me. Spit's coming out my mouth. There's spit on this microphone. There's DNA left everywhere. Okay? So honestly, DNA has solved more crimes now than fingerprints. DNA is solving crimes from 50 friggin' years ago.
Wow.
Pete, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be totally honest with all you guys. I think I ever got 2 good fingerprints in my whole career.
Really?
Okay? It's
Wow.
hard to get fingerprints, guys. People think, they watch too much TV. And the
Yeah.
other thing about DNA, Pete, it doesn't come back. You ever watch them TV shows with the cops? They're like, 2 days after the murder, their phone rings and they're like, "We got him. The
Yeah.
DNA matched."
Right
That's a crock of shit. DNA takes 6-7 months to come back.
Oh,
You
no
know what I
way.
mean? Unless they rush it. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Wow.
So it takes a long time. But
Okay.
real quick, guys, I just want to tell you this so you understand the DNA. I had a guy leave a soda bottle at a burglary. What happened was I went to the burglary and this person said to me, "That's not my soda bottle." I'm like, "What?" They're like, "The burglar must have had that soda." I took that bottle, Pete. I put it in for DNA sampling, but the
Yeah.
person's DNA was never submitted. And if the person's DNA is never submitted, how the DNA comes back is, probably a 52-year-old white male. They describe you to DNA. The DNA don't know who you are yet because they don't have your DNA, but they're able to describe what you are. 32-year-old male, 33-year-old white male, whatever it is. So I got that back, and then wait to hear this one. 2 years later, I get a call from Tennessee. A guy in Tennessee got arrested, submitted his DNA, and it matched my burglary, and he was the security guard in the building that committed the burglary.
What? No way.
Yeah, so that's how DNA works.
Wow.
Unless their DNA is in the system, you're not going to find them. But
Okay.
now every day, now you have to get your fingerprints taken, your mugshot, and your DNA taken if you get arrested.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
If you're a felon.
I see. Okay. I see Angela has commented here. His own family thought that he did it. I think that's a pretty big piece of evidence. Not evidence, but what would you call it? Circumstantial evidence or circumstantial indication?
Yes. Yes, and that's how I describe everything, Pete. And I
Yeah.
talk about the Scott Peterson case, right? And
Right.
I don't want to get into that because that's a whole nother thing. But
Right.
Scott Peterson's case had a lot of circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence, Pete, is stuff that makes you think. You're like, shit, he may have did it.
Right.
Wow, that sounds interesting, but
Yeah.
it is not hard evidence, if
Yeah.
you know what I mean. But you
Absolutely.
got to use that hard evidence like the DNA with the circumstantial evidence to
Yeah.
establish a case. You can never convict somebody on circumstantial evidence alone,
Right.
if that makes sense.
It does. So would the cell phone towers, would that be indication of circumstantial evidence as well? The cell phone towers of him pinging, or is that more conclusive evidence?
To me, I think that's conclusive. I think you're putting this man, think about this. This man lived in Washington. He drove to Moscow
Yeah.
at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
It just so happens that this man is by the crime scene. And
Yeah.
it just so happens that the man left his fucking DNA at the crime scene.
Yeah.
What are the fucking odds? Defense attorney Ann Taylor, you're going to have a hard trouble getting over that hill. I'm telling you, Ann Taylor, you're having a hard trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think you're right. And I was just, when I was researching it, I saw it was around a 10-mile drive, but around 4:20 a.m., the white sedan was seen in the neighborhood of Moscow, Idaho. And then around
Right.
an hour later, the same white sedan is seen in the neighborhood of Pullman, Washington, which is where Brian lived. So
Right.
that's more, I don't know how definite that is, but that's definitely some good indications. Those are pieces of evidence, right? That's all going to come up.
Pete, and listen, here's the thing: they're filing a lot of motions right now. Like the defense attorneys, and people are like, "Oh my God, there must be something wrong with the case." They're filing all these motions. No, the reason they're filing all these motions, and I want to tell everybody this, is because they have zero defense. So when you have zero defense, you have to try to get the evidence out of the picture. Because the evidence is going to convict them, the DNA, the statements from the cops, this, that. So you have to go after the evidence when you don't have a defense. Because, like I said, they do not have to prove him not guilty. They only have to say there's a reasonable doubt. The prosecution has to make sure he's found guilty.
Yeah.
If that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah. Wow. So, Danny, how strong of a case would you say the defense has right now? How definite do you think? Obviously, we know they're going after the evidence. We know they're going to go for mistrials probably. they're going to go after anyone and everyone they can. But do we think that there is a good chance that they will provide that or prove that reasonable doubt to the jury? What do you think?
I think absolutely not.
Okay.
I think that jury will convict him very quickly. I
Yeah.
really do, because and Pete, and I know people are they're gonna fall over when I say this. And I still believe this is true. I believe he still may plead guilty.
Wow. Okay.
And let me tell you why. I can't just say that without giving you a reason. My
Okay.
reason is Ann Taylor knows he's guilty. She
Right.
knows it, or she wouldn't be filing all these motions to go after the evidence.
Right.
Pete, she announced his defense is going to be that he likes to drive around at night. He just likes to drive around at 4 o'clock in the morning. So that's going to be the defense. Could you imagine that as the defense? My client just likes to drive around.
Wow. I know that Brian is a PhD student, so I'm just curious, how common is that for students that are going to get a PhD to just drive around at 4 or 5 in the morning? I don't know. That seems a little bit odd to me. That doesn't seem very convincing, personally.
No, and Pete, the reason I'm getting back to this is why I think there's going to be a plea bargain. Okay,
Yeah.
because the death penalty is on the table.
Yeah.
So as a defense attorney, you have everything that you have to let your client know that you need to protect him from that death penalty phase.
Right.
So if she knows that he's guilty and she knows he's going to be found guilty, she has to go to him as an attorney and say, listen, I think you're going to be convicted, but maybe we can make a plea bargain so I can keep you off the death penalty. And that's what I honestly, truly believe will end up happening. Honestly, I could see that happening. I honestly can.
I think you're probably right. Yeah, I think it looks good. Someone else commented, Jackie commented, I heard Brent Kopacka knew what happened in the house. So
listen, I know there's so many rumors about who knew what. I really don't know. I think it's just Kohlberger. I don't think anybody else was involved in this case at all.
Yeah, it's definitely a headline grabbing case. And I think one thing that's interesting to me, Danny, is that when it occurred, didn't we have almost a month before the arrest was made, or several weeks? I'm looking at the timeline here. I think the murder occurred, the unaliving occurred on the was it the 13th of November 13th?
Yes.
And the first time they pulled him over was December 15th. They pulled him over while he was driving to Pennsylvania while he was with his father.
Yes. And then, Pete, let me tell you about that, guys.
Yeah. So that's an interesting.
As a police officer, what they did was they set him up. Okay? They knew he did it.
Right.
So when you're a cop and there's somebody out there that's in danger to the public,
right,
you have the right. You need to get him off the streets ASAP.
For sure.
Okay? So they knew they had enough evidence, but they wanted to put that slam dunk evidence in. And the slam dunk evidence was the DNA. So what they did was they knew he was traveling from Idaho to Pennsylvania to his parents' house, right?
Right.
So what they did was they didn't want to lose sight of him until they got that DNA evidence back. So they put a surveillance team up and surveillanced him from Moscow to Pennsylvania, and they pulled him over twice. And then when he got back to Pennsylvania, they kept surveillancing on him because don't forget, this man could be a serial killer.
Yeah.
So they do not want to leave this guy out of custody long at all, especially if they have evidence. And I'm just telling you as a cop, my experience. So they surveillanced that home. Once the lab called and said, yo, we got the DNA, they hit the house. Okay. And in law enforcement, we call that hitting the house is when you raid the house. It's called hitting the house. So they immediately hit the house right then and there. But they waited till that slam dunk came. And the slam dunk, Pete, was the DNA.
Okay, great. And that happened after they pulled him over, correct?
Yeah, they pulled him over twice before he got home. And I'm telling you guys, because he's an endanger to the public. And they probably had enough evidence to arrest him, but they wanted to make sure that with that DNA before they made the arrest. So they surveillanced him so he wouldn't kill anybody else. And I'm being honest with you guys.
Yeah.
And to make sure he didn't go anywhere. Because at that point, Kohlberger's a danger to the public. He would have been a serial killer. Well, 100%. this man would have been a serial killer.
Yeah. And Danny, do you think there's any possibility that he's done this before and he got away with it?
Oh,
Or do you
there,
think?
I would say there's always that possibility,
Yeah.
but my gut tells me this might have been his first time. But I
Okay.
think it would have went. I think it would have went. If he got away with this, this would have been his feather in his cap, Pete, and he
Yeah.
would have continued to do this. You know,
Right.
I think this man. I don't know him, but I think he's a guy that had problems picking up girls. Okay,
Yeah.
I think he was a little awkward. He was a
Right.
heroin drug user. I don't know if you knew that. And he used to be fat and he lost a ton of weight. He used to work out a lot.
Right.
I think the man, I think he had problems
Yeah.
getting girlfriends, you know, being around girls, and I think he was awkward with it, and I think he liked one of these girls and he stalked them. That's what I personally think.
So with that synopsis, as well as the previous comments I read from, I believe it was Debbie saying that she read the DMs or the messaging chats from Brian to some of the victims in IG. I wonder what the extent was of that relationship. Obviously, I know we're not going to find out until it comes out in court, but I wonder if he got to the point of trying to ask one of them out, and maybe they saw him as a friend and he was like, hey, I'm going to take this to the next level. And then maybe they said no. I'm just curious. I'm thinking, I mean, obviously, you don't just show up at a random house, I don't think, and start doing this. So we know that there is the connection, even though we haven't established it with concrete evidence. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think this was going on for a long time? Do you think there was months of a relationship between them?
Yeah, I do. I think he was stalking him for a while. I personally don't think the girls knew him unless they
Oh,
seen him and said, you know, they might have said, yo, there's that creepy guy again. You know what I
uh,
mean, Pete? You know what
yeah.
I mean? I think they probably knew of him. I think he knew a lot of them because I think he was stalking them through social media. Now,
Wow.
Debbie brought up a good point here, Pete. I totally forgot about that. There
Yeah.
is rumors out there that they found one of the girls' IDs in the glove box inside a glove. So
Interesting.
his he probably wore gloves that night. And
Wow.
listen, I don't know if you guys know this, but serial killers, they will keep something of the victim of theirs. It's like a trophy for them.
Yeah.
So serial killers, who they kill, they'll keep a bracelet, they'll keep a necklace, they'll keep a ring, they'll keep something of the victim. So if this DNA was found, Pete, he's gonna plead guilty. How do you get around him having one of the girls' IDs? You know what I
Right.
mean? You
That's
can't.
Yeah, it would be a home run for the prosecution. I think that's a nail in the coffin. I think that is a irrevocable fact that you have to consider that as damning evidence. I mean, this is something that, we when we're adding up all the evidence, I think the biggest thing is, how did his DNA get inside the house? How did his DNA got on top of the weapon sheath and inside the house under the sheet? To me, that's just one of the slam dunks of the case also.
Oh,
And
I totally agree. And Pete, here's the thing that I think the defense is really going to bring up. Not only did the roommates, like, they saw him walking in the house and
mhm,
they didn't call the police, they just closed the door. But the
right.
biggest thing is you slept there for 8 hours with four dead bodies in your house.
Yeah.
How?
How do you
And Pete, I don't know if you know this. The rumors are that they called their friends and everybody else before they called the police.
Yes, I did hear that rumor. I saw that on another vlogger's video, and she said there were so many people at the crime scene when the police arrived that it was literally like a circus, I think is how it was described in that one video. Like, why were there so many people, and how many people were in that house before the cops actually got there or were called? These are good questions. And the defense is going to have a heyday with these questions, because I think any logical person, we want to know. That's why this case is so weird. That's why we're talking about it all day, because this is one of these, like, this is so bizarre, man. I don't even know what to make of it. You know?
Oh, me neither. I mean, I listen. I'm the one since day one argued with people, blocked people, saying that this man is guilty. But
Yeah.
I get why some people are iffy about it, because it is weird that these 20-some-year-old girls saw the men in the house, didn't
Yeah.
call the police, heard something, and then didn't call the police to 10 hours later. I mean, it's so fucked up, Pete. It really is. I don't know what's going to come up at this at the end, but we're going to know all the answers in August. And Pete, you already told me we're going to Boise, Idaho to watch this case. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will be reporting live from Boise. We will get our dates set up and we'll get everything in a row. Hopefully, they don't change the dates on us again. Hopefully, we can have concrete dates without having to sporadically change our schedule 3 or 4 times, because we
I,
all know
I
that's what happens, continuances and this and that. So, but I
yes,
can't actually be there, report from the ground. I'd love to interview some of the locals there, some of the local Idahoans, the Boiseans, and all of the people who are going to be, they're going to have feedback from, actually some of these people are going to know the accused and some of them are going to know the victims. So
yes,
perspective, because most of the people that are in here in our lives are people from around the world. Most of these people, I'm assuming, are not from these actual towns of Pullman, Washington, or Moscow, Idaho. So I want to hear from some of the locals to find out what kind of person did they think Brian was. What
yeah.
kind of girls did you think these college students were? Um, were they suspicious? Were they sneaking around? Were they doing weird missions? Or were they just being regular college girls? I
Right.
want to.
And you know what, Pete, I agree with you. And what we'll do is, this is what I think we'll do. We'll go there the first week of the trial.
Right.
Okay. And I think you're right. Well, since it's in Boise, because they changed the court into a bigger city,
Right.
we'll travel down to Moscow. We'll
Okay.
interview people at Moscow. We'll
Yeah.
go to Washington State, where he was a student. We'll
Yeah.
interview people there. We'll be there a week and we will go over this case up and down. And then, Pete, they're saying the trial is going to last 3 months. That's
Right.
how long this trial is going to last. Me and you go back the last week of the trial when the jury's out. And we
Perfect.
get everybody's perspective when the jury's out.
Perfect. So we'll go like towards the beginning and then at the end.
Yes, that's what we'll do. Definitely. It was like Angela said, they changed the venue
Right.
because too many people know about the case. It's hard to get a jury. So
Yeah.
that's why they put it in the Boise.
Yeah.
This way it'd be easier to get a jury.
Definitely. And Danny, speaking of the jury, that's an interesting topic as well. How are these? First of all, none of the jury members are going to be able to go into this case blindly. Of course, they're going to have to be sequestered. Of course, they're going to have to be deprived of contact and information and news while they're in trial. But don't you think that it's fair to assume that every single jury member going into this case kind of already has an opinion? Kind of
Yes,
already.
yeah, Pete, I agree. It is going to be hard to find a jury.
It's
This
going
is a national case that had how many documentaries already? I was in one of the documentaries. You
to.
know?
So I feel like that's going to be one of the biggest challenges. I think really from both sides is just finding a jury that is an unbiased jury, because all of us are either we're sons, we're daughters, we're brothers, we're sisters, we're all family to someone. So we can all imagine the scenarios being flipped. We can imagine having our own loved ones taken away, and then by the other extreme, it's possible that what if it were one of our family members who are being accused? So just to think of it that way. Of course, we would like to think that we know our own family. Everyone wants to think they know their own family. But I think once the questions really start coming into Brian's family, as someone mentioned earlier in the chat, they said that their accusation was that Brian's family already believed he was guilty. So to me, that's another piece of circumstantial. I don't want to say proof, but it's definitely a circumstantial evidentiary fact that they're.
No, exactly. And you know what, Pete? You brought up a good point to me. Maybe me and you go a day or two before the trial and
Okay.
start interviewing people before the trial. What do you think's going to happen right before the trial? So maybe get there 2 days ahead of time.
Yeah, I like that. I think that maybe if we go on the day, the anticipation's already going to be there. A lot of people who are wanting to be at the trial, they're going to be outside and everything. But I think that if we go a couple days in advance, we'll be able to really get out into the community more and actually get some genuine reactions and some genuine feedback from the locals there.
Yeah,
Because
and Jacqueline brought up a good point here. Yes, they were texting each other. We didn't even bring that up, Pete. They were texting each other.
wow, yes, the
Pete,
roommate.
I just don't get these roommates. I'm telling
Yeah,
you, I believe them. I believe they had nothing to do with this. But I'm telling you, as I'm thinking, I worked for a defense attorney for 3 years. Don't
yeah.
yell at me, guys. After I was done being a cop, I went and worked for the defense for 3 years. Okay, so I worked for a criminal defense attorney for 3 years in Vegas, and I'm telling you, They are going to go after those girls
Yeah.
because it's weird. We all think it's weird. They are going to be raked over the coals. And listen, guys, I want you not to be concerned about this. But I'm telling you right now, the defense team is going to subpoena them two girls
Oh yeah.
because they're going to make sure they testify. So
Absolutely.
if the prosecution don't put them on the stand, they will subpoena them girls.
Yeah.
Them girls will testify. 100%.
Yes. Now, Danny, if the prosecution does put the roommates on the stand, then the defense attorneys will have the opportunity to cross-examine. Correct?
We lost Pete. You
Oh,
there?
yes. Now,
Yeah, I can hear you.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Will the defense attorneys have a chance to cross-examine if the prosecution puts the roommates on the stand initially? Will that give
Yes.
that'll give them their opening to start their line of questioning initially?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes. So what happens is, say the prosecution puts one of the girls on the stand. When they
Right.
get done, which is going to take, I'm telling you, it's going to take hours, not maybe a half a day.
Maybe a
And then
whole.
the defense attorney is going to cross-examine them, and that's going to take a day. These
Wow.
girls, and then when the defense attorney gets done, they go back to the prosecution for anything that they want to go over that the defense might have said that they could,
Yeah.
rebuttal. It's called rebuttal.
The rebuttal.
Okay. So then they'd let the prosecution read. These girls are going to be stand for at least 2 days, both of them, without
Wow.
a doubt.
I mean, I think we're going to have to find out some sort of definitive reason why there was no phone call made earlier, and why they did that, the texting each other. There's a lot of suspiciousness, a lot of weirdness. So yes, I get it why some people are saying, oh, there's too many uncertains in this case. I do agree there are a lot of uncertain factors, but also I think the uncertain factors don't negate or take away from the strong evidence that we also have in the case. I think we have to look at all of it, and the DNA, the cell phone towers. How has Brian's demeanor been since he's been arrested? That's another interesting question, right?
Oh, exactly. And Pete, here's the other thing. I mean, they're going to go back and ping his phone more. They're
Yeah.
going to do all his phone records, all his Google searches, everything. They're going to have so much evidence on this guy because I will guarantee you, Pete, he surveillanced that house.
Yeah.
He surveillanced that home, and people are going to say, well, why did he surveillanced the home to make sure he was going to be successful? He knew what he was going to do. He knew how he was going to get into that house, and he knew how he was going to commit the crime because he surveillanced and practiced. I know you guys don't want to hear that, but that's what serial killers do. That's what active shooters do. They practice and they surveillance. The Virginia Tech kid surveillance Virginia Tech classroom where he hit for 6 months. The Columbine kids watched it for a year and a half. That's what they do.
Wow.
Surveillance.
You're probably right, and I have a feeling we're going to discover that more and more as we're getting more evidence here. I did see one other interesting fact that might be the basis of some kind of connection between the accused and the victims. I did see that Xana's older sister went to Washington State University. She was majoring in marketing. So one of the victims had an older sister who went to the same university as Brian. Now, Danny, do you think that is anything at all, or do you think that's a random coincidence because the towns were so close to each other?
Yeah, it is kind of close to each other, but it could be. You know what I mean? Maybe he's seen her, maybe he knew her. And
Yeah.
here's my other thing. I don't know this answer, but to me it's kind of interesting. Why did somebody from Pennsylvania end up in Idaho in college?
Good question.
Right? I mean, why is this man in Idaho, Washington, Idaho?
Yeah.
And he lives in Pennsylvania. It's just it's not like this big fancy college, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's another great question. What's his genesis? When did he come to that town and start college there? And also, were the victims born and raised there? I guess that's two questions that I could probably Google and find out. I just don't know the answer to those.
Right. And Peter, I don't know if you saw the parents. And oh, guys, I should have brought this up. You know when I said there has to be a plea, that I believe there could be a plea bargain?
Yeah.
Most DAs, and I'm sure this DA is going to do this in this case, they will not plea bargain a death penalty case or a rape case until they talk to the
Okay.
victim. The
Yeah.
victim has to approve it. Any good district attorney would make the victim's families approve anything before they agreed to a plea bargain.
Yeah, that seems fair. I think that's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Nature of this case and given the sensitivity that needs to be involved because it's such a delicate situation. I know,
Right.
I know you're talking to victims all the time, Danny. So, I mean, my heart goes out to all the families out there. I can't imagine. I can only begin to try to imagine. And that's one reason that I think it's so valuable what we're doing today, shedding light on the case and bringing these facts to surface, because we all of us who are watching today, hopefully, are people who want the world to be a better place. We want the world to be free from unalivers walking around, and we want to be able to live happy and healthy. And so when something like this happens and just shocks the community, it sends shock waves everywhere throughout the world. And Danny, I was curious about something, just I might be going back and forth, but something you mentioned at the beginning of the show, that Brian actually purchased overalls on Amazon. And did he not also purchase the weapon or a weapon on Amazon? Are those facts?
Yes. Yes. That's
Okay.
why I don't understand why people think this man's not guilty. And
Yeah.
it
So,
shocks me, but I think this is the world we live in, Pete.
yeah.
Everything's a conspiracy. Like we had
Yeah.
them 2 plane crashes. All of a sudden it's a conspiracy.
All of a sudden.
Everything's a conspiracy now.
Yeah, for sure. So what evidence do we know? We have, like, there's proof from receipts of Amazon purchases, correct? Like transactional financial receipts that exist to prove that he actually made these transactions on Amazon, correct?
That's correct.
So we know that for sure. So I guess the conspiracy theorists are just saying, oh, it was faked, or someone hacked into his account or something. I mean, how do you disclaim that? How do you discredit?
How do you disclaim it? And listen, people are like, Pete, that like when they try to disclaim the DNA to me, they're like, it was a party house. He could have been in that house before.
Wow.
Oh, how did his DNA get under one of the victim's body on the weapon case? Okay, he wasn't partying in the house with the weapon case.
Yeah.
Okay, people are like dumb. Honestly,
Yeah.
I hate to say this, but people are dumb, Pete.
Yeah.
They just don't think, and I'm afraid we'll get one of these dummies on the jury.
Wow. And I see Angela said 3 months prior to that on Amazon that she believes that he purchased that. So I mean, we got to ask these questions. You know, the evidence is the evidence. No matter what, if I'm a lawyer, if I'm on the case, then the first thing I'm going to be saying is, what about the evidence? What about the DNA? You know, obviously, if I was on the case, I would only be working as a prosecution. I would not try to defend this case personally, because I don't know what ground I would have to stand on for a defense, other than trying to throw it out, which I guess that's what Miss Taylor is doing, it seems.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you see Debbie in the comment here is mentioning, I think they're going to take people from other states to be on the jury. So is that a first, Danny, or is that something that might be typical in a high-profile case such as this?
I don't think they can't do that. It's a state case. They can't.
I didn't know.
It has to be in-state jurors.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see. Got you. So, again, it's going to be hard to find anyone who's not been following this case, especially native Idahoans who have been literally locked in. This has been their community that's been shocked and riveted. But at the same time, I do hope we get the best group of people possible to get a fair, honest trial and to get these facts to surface.
Yeah, I agree, Pete. And listen, they're saying 3 months. So if the trial starts August 11th, you're talking November 11th. You're talking right around when the murders originally happened, and you're talking 3 years. And you know what, Pete? If you go back and look at my videos, my first 2 or 3 videos, I said this case would take 2 to 3 years, and people laughed at me. I knew this was going to be high profiled, and I knew it was going to take 3 years. I knew it.
You're right. When I was going back to some of your videos, Danny, I was like, wait, he was reporting all the way back in early 2023? Like, wait a second. This case has really been going on that long. And it seems like it's quicker because I feel like I just heard this news. But at the same time, yes, we're now going on the third calendar year since 2022 when it transpired. So obviously in December, it'll be 3 years. But it's crazy how the system works and how slow it takes sometimes. I don't know if that's something that can be changed ever in America, but hey, maybe one day we'll get a little bit faster and swifter with our cases.
Let me explain. I'll explain that to you guys too.
Yeah.
You have the right, when you get arrested, you have the right to a speedy trial.
Right.
So the prosecutors have to bring you to court to trial within 180 days.
Okay.
But you have the right to waive that.
I
And
see.
most people do
Gotcha.
because it gives their defense attorneys more time to come up with a defense.
Okay.
So, really, they have 180 days to bring you to trial, but most people will waive that right to a speedy trial.
I see. Gotcha. So that's probably that was to be expected, I'd say, in this case, especially with no definitive alibi for him. Is there any speculation of an alibi? Has that even been mentioned? Has the defense even brought that up, Danny, that you know of? Because I'm
What,
pretty
an
sure,
alibi?
yeah, an alibi for the accused. He
The
has no.
only alibi they said they had was that he drives around at night. I swear to God, Pete. I swear to God, they have nothing. They have absolutely nothing. And I seriously, like, and here's the thing. I told my followers, everybody involved in this case is going to be famous. It's going to be like the O.J. Simpson case.
Yeah.
Win or lose, the defense attorney is going to be famous. She'll be on CNN. She'll be on Fox. She'll be on MSNBC. They're all going to be famous after this case. But she has a long uphill battle to win this case. I don't know how you win it. I don't think you can.
Yeah, I think you're right, Danny. It's going to be one heck of a case, but one thing that the defense is going to try, which also, as you mentioned in one of your videos, the prosecution is also going to do their best at trying, is investigating the IgG, the investigative genetic genealogy. So what
Right.
is, as you mentioned in a previous video of yours, they are each calling their own experts, right? And each expert
Yes.
analyzes the evidence. So of course, if I'm an expert, I'm gonna lean towards the side of whoever's paying me, right?
Yeah, exactly. Pete, and honest to God, guys, I think we need to stop that in court. That you pay witnesses to come testify. So
Yeah,
listen, if you're paying me, I'm like, yeah, this ain't his fucking DNA, right?
sure.
I,
Whatever.
I just don't get that. We
Yeah,
pay experts. When I hear expert, I turn it off. I
yeah.
turn it off. I don't even want to hear from an expert because I
Expert,
don't trust him. He's getting paid. I don't want to even hear from him.
expert means
Honest to God.
yeah, right. And Danny, I think there's a lot of experts out there who they make a full-time living at being court experts, going from state to state or city to city, and that's their main bread and butter in life is just literally going through and being experts for whoever pays them. And to me, that's a little bit messed up because it's like, hey, are we really getting facts and truthful, objective information, or are we getting speculative guesses from a paid party, a paid actor,
Exactly. And that's what, Pete, I think you hit it right on the head. They're paid actors. Now,
Yeah,
listen, Pete, if say they hired me as their expert, right?
right.
The defense attorney hired me as my expert, and I said to them, yo, I did what you told me to do. And yep, it's your client. He's guilty, right? Are they going to pay me? Am I going to testify? Fuck no. These
Yeah,
experts are paid. They shouldn't be allowed to testify in trial. I said what I said. I'm,
yeah.
I'm telling you, they shouldn't. Sorry about the language. Pete's the nice guy. I'm the bad guy.
One bad cop, so it all works. But you're absolutely right, Danny. I think that's probably, I don't know if that's going to be where they're going to start with the defense, but we know that they're going to get there at some point. They're going to start calling their experts. Their experts are going to try to debunk everything and try to discredit all of the facts that we already see. I see Debbie commenting that there will be a movie coming up. Yes, Danny, maybe you and me can be in the actual movie. Who knows? Who knows, man? But anyway, there's one more fact that I noticed in one of your videos, Danny. You mentioned, or actually one of your fans mentioned, they had a question for you. They said, do you think that the jury is going to need therapy after this case is over? That was a very good question.
And you know what, guys? I'm going to tell you the honest fact. They're going to see some horrible things.
Yeah.
Not only are they going to see the crime scene, they're going to see the autopsy photos. And I'm going to tell you guys, the first time I ever seen an autopsy, I am not kidding you. I left there and we're in the police car driving back to the station. And I said to the other two officers in the car, I said, there's some things a human being should not see. And
Yeah.
my buddy in the front seat looked at me and he said, I'm going to forget I seen it. I said, me too. So, yes, these people are going to see horrible, horrible things. And yes, they'll probably need therapy. And listen, I just want to go one thing, Pete. Angela made a comment that I was right about this case the whole time except for the beginning.
Okay.
Did you hear how off I was in the beginning?
No, what did you say in the beginning? I can't remember. I went through it, so I forget the very beginning one.
Pete, I ripped the Moscow PD. Like
Oh,
I was like, because it took them a month to solve this. So I
yeah.
was like, they're a small PD. They need to get help. They're above their head. They'll never make an arrest. I ripped them. And Pete, the one night I did a video, like I ripped them so bad. 8 hours later, they made the arrest in my hometown, basically.
Wow. Oh,
I was so embarrassed the next day. I had to do a video and say I apologize to the Moscow PD, to all my followers, because I ate crow. I ate crow back.
hey, at the end of the day, Danny, I remember when it first happened, and even though I wasn't as actively involved in the crime solver life, I was noticing this case, and every few days I was checking back on social media, and I was saying, "What's happening? We've got all these murders. What's going with these unalivings? We have this huge horrific crime. Do we have a spree now? Is this going to be a spree all over America, or what?" Like, I was wondering the same thing, Danny. So I think that was a good point. That was a valid point to say, why is it taking them so long? But it is kind of ironic that they nabbed the guy in your old hometown. That's kind of fishy too. Maybe you're a suspect. Who knows?
Oh, Pete, listen to this. I forgot this is one last thing. You probably don't know this, but my
Uh-huh.
followers do, and we actually have more people in here than we had the whole time. But
Nice.
listen, my followers know this. Pete, I made a bet on this case.
Okay.
I live in Vegas, so I made a bet.
Yeah, got to do it.
If Kohlberger is found not guilty,
Uh-huh.
I will run down the Las Vegas Strip in my underwear, Pete.
Oh, wow. I got to be there. I'm going to be the announcer. Ladies and gentlemen. But hey, I don't think you're going to have to. What do you win?
Listen,
What do you win if not? If he's found guilty, what do you get?
I get nothing, but everybody gets to not see me in my underwear because they don't want to see me in my underwear.
Angela might want to see that. I think Angela and Debbie want to see that. Look, see, Debbie
Pete, they don't want to see a 50-some-year-old man running around in his underwear. I promise you, you don't. So you got to hope Kohlberger's found guilty.
All right,
Because listen, I will do it. I promise you, I will do it. I'm a man of my word.
wow.
So I will do it.
Angela just said that it's not streaming from any other platform. She just checked. So that's another interesting fact, Danny, is that they are limiting the media involvement and they're limiting the access to what we're going to be able to find out when the court date transpires. Is that correct? That's
I think Angela, maybe it's only on YouTube, but I can see us on Instagram right now.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what she meant.
Oh, okay. I thought she meant in advance. I thought she meant that the actual trial was not going to be streaming. Oh, I see. Okay. Because
I think she meant that. I can see us on Instagram right now, and I know we were on, I don't know if we're on Facebook, but I know we're on YouTube because we're getting questions.
Yeah, I'm on YouTube right now. So, but did you hear that as well, Danny, that during the actual trial, they, I don't know if it was an order to the media or something, a restricted media access is going to happen. Did you hear about that? I don't know if it's inside the courtroom. I think that's what I heard, that they're not going to allow as much or as many media people inside the courtroom as they normally would. I don't know, because of the high profile nature.
Pete, like me and you would never get in that courtroom. It's going to be all media guys. They're going to get there ahead of time. We'll just have to report outside most people.
Yeah. But maybe we can talk to someone we know and maybe we can get our way in there. Who knows? I mean, it's not going to be likely, though, I don't think. But it would be cool if we could get in there. Even in the back of the room is fine. I'll report from the back.
I think so. Listen, we got to be on YouTube, Angela, because the comments are coming in from YouTube.
Yeah.
So we got to be on YouTube.
Yeah. Hey, if we're having,
I can see us on Instagram right now as we're talking. I'm watching. Yeah. I'm on Instagram.
Yeah, and I see us on YouTube. So if we are having technical difficulties, please forgive us. Our show is always evolving. We're always getting better. So we will be doing more in the future. And I'm excited to be just talking about this, diving into it, and then getting into questions. Before the show ends, Danny, do we have any specific questions that have stood out that need to be answered?
I think this is what this is how we can end this. First of all, I want to invite everybody we're going to do this every podcast. Now, Pete, I don't know if you're available tonight or not, so it's up to you. But
Yeah.
every time we're going to have an after party, like The Walking Dead. We're
Right.
going to have the Miners Details after party. We're going to go live for 2 hours starting 8:30 tonight. And
Yeah.
we're going to do this every podcast. Every podcast, we're going to have the after party on live on TikTok. And it'll start an hour and a half after we end the podcast. And we can actually talk about this case actually a little bit more on the live if anybody wants. But I just wanted to bring that up. But Pete, one thing I would say is that we're looking at a 3-month trial. I think you're looking at the jury being out over a day because they'll want to go through all the evidence. So it's going to take them a day or so to go through the evidence, and then I think they'll come back to guilty, and I think they'll give them the death penalty. I mean it. I really do.
I think there's a very good probability that you're right, and I think that honestly, I think it could be quicker than 3 months. I mean, I don't know if the prosecution is really going to be able to make that case that quick, but I think with all the evidence, it could be I think it could happen in a month, possibly. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there from courtroom dramas I've seen and legal movies and TV shows. I just feel like there's so many things in this case that the prosecution can just say, hey, no, look, we have a home run here. And I feel like the defense is going to be obviously just fighting and swinging, taking swings left and right. So we'll see how many of those land. I don't know.
Let me answer these 2 questions real quick.
Okay,
we got one here, Donkey of the Week. You know what that is? I don't know who this is, but it's somebody knows me for sure because I used to do a poker podcast on YouTube. Not a podcast, but I used to do YouTube videos on poker, and I used to have the Donkey of the Week every week. So that's somebody that used to watch me on YouTube when I used to have a poker podcast.
Wow, I love it.
Okay, here's a good question, Pete.
Yes.
Danny, do you think the judge will keep the jury in a hotel? Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Without a doubt, Rocket. Let me tell you why. They don't want that jury to be influenced by anything. So they're going to put them in a hotel with no TV. They're going to keep somebody there to make sure they're not talking to anybody. They're not going to be able to text their family, talk to their family, watch TV. It sucks being on a jury. Honest to God, it sucks being on a jury for a big case like this. I wouldn't want to be on this case. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, you're right, Danny. When I worked on Beast Games on Amazon Prime recently, they took the phone away from every single contestant. So all these contestants literally could not text their family. They could not check the news. They could not check social media. And it was for multiple reasons. But one thing is they wanted them to be detached from everything else in the world. And on a case like this, I think it's paramount that you have to get a clean mind in there. You can't be cluttered up with all the garbage that is filtering through on social media.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Pete. 100%. Pete, let's we got 3 minutes here, right?
Okay.
I think we got to go with Angela, Jacqueline, and Debbie. They were the 3 main questions. We'll give them all prizes. Angela and Debbie won before, so I have their addresses. I'll let them pick a shirt, hat.
Nice.
Jacqueline, DM me your address or message me your address. Pick a hat, shirt, or a hat shirt, or a mug, and I'll send you the link so you can look all our podcast merchandise up.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. Yes. And we'll continue to be exploring this case, Danny. This isn't obviously the only time we're going to talk about it, but I'm glad we dedicated a whole hour to this because this is such a big deal in America and in the world. So we need justice for those victims.
Yes. And Pete, and we didn't mention this. We got 2 minutes real quick. I just want to mention it. The family members, I can't even imagine the family members, Pete. I can't even imagine the heartbreak that they're going through. It's unimaginable.
Yeah. I think we have to just continue to give our hearts out, send our condolences out, but also by doing these platforms and doing these shows, Danny, we're showing that we are concerned Americans. We are human beings that care. We do not want to allow this stuff to just go by without us voicing our opinions and taking the opinions of everyone else. That's why this is a free platform for everyone to chime in, for everyone to voice their opinion. So thank you, everyone, today. And thank you, Danny, for bringing this up.
Yeah. And listen, I want to end it with this too, guys. If you have a case that you want us to discuss, you want to come on the podcast, you could come on the podcast. Just message me. I probably got 4 messages today. 2 of them national cases, and I told you about them, Pete.
Yeah.
So you never know. We can get you on here, get the word out. If you have a case you want us to discuss, please DM me, DM Pete, message us, and we'll definitely get it on. Or you can email us, thecrimesolver@yahoo.com. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it, Pete. We'll be back next week. The after party starts at 8:30 on TikTok Live.
All right. Thank you, guys. See you on TikTok.
See you later. Pete, stay on. We'll talk.
All right, brother.
Bye.